Sophia Almeida lived a modest life in the London suburbs, working as a cleaner in an imposing corporate building in the city's financial centre. Her kind, attentive brown eyes concealed years of humiliation and pain caused by a marriage that had transformed into an emotional prison. Whilst cleaning the luxurious office of Harrington Enterprises on the 40th floor, Sophia often admired the view of the city she loved so dearly, yet which seemed to exist in a parallel universe to her own. On a particularly grey autumn morning, when golden leaves danced on London's pavements, Sophia accidentally spilled a cup of tea over important documents left on the conference table. In panic, she attempted to dry the papers when the door abruptly opened. It was Eleanor Harrington, the enigmatic CEO of the company, known for her coldness and impeccable perfection. The air seemed to freeze the moment their gazes met. Eleanor remained motionless for several seconds, her aristocratic face showing an expression that Sophia couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger, as expected, but something deeper, almost like recognition. Impossible, thought Sophia, whilst her hands trembled holding the soaked documents. After all, what connection could exist between a humble Brazilian cleaner and one of Britain's most powerful women? What Sophia didn't know was that Eleanor had just returned from a trip to Brazil, where she had been investigating her family origins following the death of her adoptive mother. For years, Eleanor had lived without knowing her true history, raised by a British high society family that never mentioned her adoption or South American roots. Now, before her stood a woman whose face was a perfect reflection of her own. In that fateful moment, as Big Ben's clock chimed in the distance, something inexplicable connected the two women. Eleanor, always controlled and calculating, felt an unfamiliar emotion course through her body. With a surprisingly gentle voice, she dismissed the assistant accompanying her and closed the office door, leaving only herself and Sophia in the luxurious environment that would witness the beginning of an extraordinary journey between two souls separated by fate but united by blood. The day after the strange encounter, Sophia returned to her small flat in Hackney, where her husband, Ricardo, awaited her with his usual expression of contempt. A former footballer whose career promises never materialized, he had transformed into a bitter man who took out his frustrations on his wife. That night, as Sophia prepared dinner, he threw an envelope onto the kitchen table. An invitation to a charity event organized by Harrington Enterprises, where employees at all levels had been invited. The idea of attending such a sophisticated event filled Sophia with anxiety, but also with an inexplicable hope of seeing Eleanor Harrington again. Using her secret savings, she bought a simple yet elegant dress from a second-hand shop in Notting Hill. When she looked in the mirror on the night of the event, for a brief moment, she saw more than the submissive cleaner. She saw a woman with dignity and, strangely, features reminiscent of the powerful CEO who hadn't left her thoughts. The Dorchester Hotel's ballroom gleamed with crystal chandeliers and London's elite when Sophia and Ricardo arrived. As they walked amongst the guests, Sophia felt curious and disdainful glances. Ricardo immediately abandoned her to approach a group of executives, eager to make connections that might benefit him. It was then that Philip Harrington, Eleanor's ex-husband and still a director in the company, approached Sophia with a malicious smile that didn't reach his icy blue eyes. With a champagne flute in hand, Philip asked loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "So you're the cleaner who destroyed confidential documents in Eleanor's office? Interesting how people of your level always manage to infiltrate these events." The words, sharp as razors, cut through the festive air. Ricardo, returning at that moment, didn't defend his wife. On the contrary, he joined in the laughter, eager to please someone so influential, even at the cost of Sophia's dignity. What none of them noticed was that Eleanor Harrington observed the scene from the mezzanine, her intense gaze fixed on Sophia, who now struggled to contain her tears whilst facing public humiliation. In the CEO's eyes shone something more than compassion. It was fierce determination, the kind of look that precedes great changes. Eleanor made a discreet gesture to her personal assistant, who immediately noted something on her tablet. The plan that had begun to form in her mind after the office encounter now gained more defined and urgent contours. A week after the Dorchester incident, Sophia received a letter addressed only to her, bearing the distinctive seal of Harrington Enterprises. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope away from Ricardo's vigilant eyes. It was a personal invitation from Eleanor Harrington for a private meeting at her residence in Kensington Palace Gardens. The letter mentioned urgent family matters and requested absolute discretion. Sophia felt her heart race. What family matters could she possibly have with a woman she barely knew? On the indicated Sunday, Sophia invented an excuse about extra work and made her way to the imposing Victorian mansion, where she was received not by staff, but by Eleanor herself. In the private study of the mansion, with walls covered in ancient books and family photographs, Eleanor revealed the truth she had discovered on her trip to Brazil. They were twin sisters, separated at birth when their biological mother, a young unmarried Brazilian woman, couldn't raise both daughters and was forced to give one up for international adoption. Between contained tears, Eleanor showed Sophia the adoption documents, birth certificates and, most impressively, a DNA test confirming their relationship. Sophia, who had always felt an inexplicable void, as if part of her was missing, finally understood that sensation of incompleteness that had accompanied her throughout life. The memories of her childhood in a São Paulo orphanage before being adopted by an Anglo-Brazilian couple gained new perspective. What surprised Sophia most wasn't just the revelation of her origin, but the fact that Eleanor possessed extraordinary business talents, whilst she herself had always demonstrated a remarkable intuition for investments, even without formal education in the field. In secret, using the little money she could hide from Ricardo, Sophia had built a small investment portfolio that grew consistently, revealing a natural ability she never could fully develop. As the London sun set, casting golden shadows through the mansion's tall windows, the newly discovered sisters shared stories, pains, and dreams. It was then that Eleanor proposed something unexpected. She had been observing Sophia and investigating her situation. She knew of Ricardo's abusive nature and her sister's wasted talents. With the characteristic determination that had taken her to the top of the corporate world, Eleanor suggested a bold plan that would forever change the destiny of both. A plan requiring courage, cunning, and Sophia's willingness to finally free herself from the invisible chains binding her to a life of submission. Eleanor's plan was as simple as it was audacious. For 1 month, they would swap lives. Sophia would learn about the Harrington business empire whilst Eleanor investigated her sister's life and Ricardo's behavior more deeply. For this, Eleanor spent 2 intensive weeks training Sophia in business fundamentals. Surprised by how quickly her sister absorbed complex information and offered valuable insights that even her most experienced executives hadn't considered. During this preparation period, an incident occurred that deeply tested Sophia's character. One of Harrington Enterprises' most important investors, Lord Winchester, made a merger proposal that would enormously benefit the company financially but would require closing a factory in Manchester, leaving hundreds of employees jobless. Eleanor, following her business instinct, was inclined to accept the proposal, presenting the case to Sophia as an executive decision-making exercise. To Eleanor's surprise, Sophia spent the night analyzing financial reports and, the following morning, presented a brilliant counter-proposal, a restructuring that would maintain the jobs whilst increasing the factory's operational efficiency. Her plan would not only save jobs but also improve the company's public image and create long-term value. Most impressive was that Sophia defended her position not from naive idealism, but with solid financial arguments demonstrating how employee well-being could translate into competitive advantage. Eleanor, watching her sister passionately defend the jobs of workers she'd never met, saw more than competence. She saw compassion allied with strategic intelligence, a rare combination in the business world. Perhaps this is what's missing at Harrington Enterprises, thought Eleanor, recognizing that years of relentless pursuit of results had hardened her heart, distancing her from the human values her adoptive mother had cherished. Meanwhile, Ricardo had noticed subtle changes in Sophia's behavior, actually Eleanor in disguise, who now responded to his provocations with calculated silence instead of the usual fear. Intrigued and irritated by this new resistance, he intensified his control attempts, not realizing that each action of his was being carefully documented as part of the sisters' plan. Eleanor, experiencing Sophia's reality firsthand, felt growing anger, but also deep admiration for the resilience her sister had demonstrated all these years. The life swap was scheduled to last only a month, but after just 3 weeks, an unexpected event accelerated the timeline. Ricardo, frustrated with his wife's behavior change and suspecting she was hiding something, invaded her personal space and discovered documents related to Harrington Enterprises. Furious and seeing a blackmail opportunity, he confronted Sophia with threats of public exposure. It was at this critical moment that Eleanor, still in Sophia's role, made a decision that would permanently alter the course of events. It was time for the final revelation. The day after the confrontation with Ricardo, Sophia received a visit at home from a renowned Harrington Enterprises solicitor, who delivered official documents to Ricardo. The man who for years had fed on his wife's insecurity now faced irrefutable evidence of his own tax fraud and hidden debts, alongside meticulous records of his psychological abuse. The expression of superiority on his face gave way to panic when he realized his life of manipulation was about to crumble. Meanwhile, at Harrington Enterprises headquarters, Sophia, in Eleanor's role, conducted a crucial meeting with the board of directors. Presenting the restructuring plan she had developed to save the Manchester factory, she impressed even the most skeptical board members with her combination of strategic vision and social sensitivity. Philip Harrington, Eleanor's ex-husband and the same man who had humiliated Sophia at the charity event, observed with growing discomfort the brilliance of who he believed to be his ex-wife. The Manchester plan was unanimously approved, generating headlines in Britain's main financial newspapers about the surprising approach change of the corporate London world's ice queen. Factory employees sent emotional letters of gratitude, many of which Sophia read with tears in her eyes, feeling for the first time the positive impact that ethical business decisions could have on real people's lives. Eleanor, discreetly observing from behind the scenes, recognized that her sister possessed not only the same analytical intelligence as her, but also something Eleanor had lost over the years: the ability to genuinely connect with people. On a typically rainy London afternoon, whilst Sophia signed documents in Eleanor's office, she received an unexpected call. It was the private detective hired by Eleanor to investigate Ricardo's past. He had discovered something shocking. Before meeting Sophia, Ricardo had been married to a Brazilian woman who mysteriously disappeared after threatening to expose his fraudulent schemes. The implications were disturbing, and Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine upon realizing the danger she had unconsciously faced all these years. That night, in a secure video conference between the two mansions where they now lived, the sisters finalized the details of the final phase of their plan. Eleanor had concluded that Ricardo represented not just a threat to Sophia's happiness, but potentially to her physical safety. With the help of private investigators and connections in the highest spheres of London society, everything was prepared for what they called Revelation Day, when the world would discover not only the existence of twins separated at birth, but also the true nature of the man who had controlled and manipulated Sophia for so many years. The Savoy Hotel's grand ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers as London's business and social elite gathered for Harrington Enterprises' annual event. The buzz in the room was intense. Rumors about revolutionary changes in the company circulated in the city's most exclusive circles. Ricardo, who had received a special invitation despite recent tensions with Sophia, nervously adjusted his tie. There was something in the air, a disquieting electricity he couldn't comprehend. At 9 o'clock sharp, the lights dimmed and Eleanor Harrington took the stage, stunning in an impeccably tailored navy blue suit. Silence took over the room as she began her speech about business transformation and human values, surprisingly new themes coming from the executive known for her calculated coldness. Then, to the astonishment of all present, Eleanor gestured towards the side curtains, from where emerged a woman identical to her, dressed with similar elegance, but with a warmer smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Eleanor with a clear, firm voice, "allow me to introduce my twin sister, Sophia Almeida, separated from me at birth and rediscovered by a stroke of fate. The woman who, in recent weeks, has conducted some of the most brilliant and humanitarian decisions Harrington Enterprises has ever made." A murmur of shock ran through the ballroom as cameras flashed, capturing the historic moment. Ricardo, paralyzed in his place, observed with horror the revelation that dismantled all his manipulations. Eleanor continued, her voice gaining intensity. "Over the past month, Sophia and I exchanged lives to better understand our realities. What we discovered was extraordinary, not just the indestructible bond between sisters separated by an ocean, but also the transformative power of empathy in business and personal life." At this moment, police officers discreetly positioned near Ricardo stepped forward, whilst on the giant screen behind the sisters appeared evidence of the financial crimes and psychological abuse committed by him. As Ricardo was quietly escorted from the ballroom, Sophia took the microphone. With a confidence she had never shown before, she announced the creation of the Harrington Almeida Foundation, dedicated to supporting women victims of abusive relationships and promoting financial education in vulnerable communities in both Britain and Brazil. The audience, initially shocked, erupted into enthusiastic applause when Sophia revealed she would donate her part of the newly discovered family fortune to fund the initiative. In the months that followed, the story of the Harrington Almeida twins captured the imagination of British and international public. Sophia, now co-CEO of the company with her sister, brought a new dimension of social responsibility to the conglomerate, whilst Eleanor rediscovered the human warmth she had lost in years of emotional isolation. Together, they created a new leadership model that challenged the conventions of the corporate world, proving that success and compassion could not only coexist but strengthen each other. On a spring afternoon, a year after the first encounter on the 40th floor office, the sisters contemplated the London view from the garden of the Kensington mansion. Sophia, holding a cup of English tea blended with Brazilian mate, a mixture they had created to symbolize their dual heritage, looked at Eleanor and smiled. "You know, for years I felt like half of something, incomplete without knowing why. Now I understand that even separated, we were never really alone." The two women, perfect reflections of each other and yet deeply unique, observed the London sunset painting the sky with shades of gold and pink, whilst on the horizon, like a silent promise, the future unfolded in possibilities that neither had ever imagined possible. If you enjoy this kind of story, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next videos.